Last night, some huge allegations came out towards streamer Mizkif, and these were in regard to a past relationship that he had with another very big streamer, Emeru. So last night, Emeru did a stream going over all of the details and all these allegations. I ended up making a video about that. I'm providing a link to that video in the description as well as in the corner right there. Now, I had started recording and making my video just a few short hours after she had been done streaming, and while I was doing that, Mizkif ended up going live for about 40 minutes and had his own response to everything that had come out. He denies some of the allegations, doesn't deny some of them, admits to others, and also presents his own pointing at Emeru and is pretty much making the claim that this was a toxic relationship on both sides. Last thing before diving into the video, if you're new here, want to keep up to date on this and other dramas that are happening, consider subscribing. Also, if you found my coverage in this video useful, want to get this out to more people, give this video a like, just helps boost it in the algorithm, but regardless of if you do either of those things, thank you for watching. Shout out to Zoe for compiling all of the clips from his stream into one video here. It's about 10 minutes shorter than the full stream and just provides all of that necessary information from the main highlights of that stream. There is one specific clip earlier on in his stream that I just wanted to show first, as I think it's important to show how he kind of introduces himself in this stream. And that's not by talking about Emeru specifically, but just saying that he's just going to start leaking shit about top content creators because why not?
I'm going to completely separate myself from these people in this community, which is fine, and I've already been doing it. But I have hundreds of messages and DMs from people, things that people probably would never want to get released that are very interesting for everyone, and I will be releasing it as time goes on, because why not? Go crazy. Who cares? Who fucking cares? Expose everything, bro. It's time to go full demon time. It's clearly obvious at this point. It's full demon time. Why not? It is time to go full demon time. Just letting you know. There is no holding back. Who cares anymore? I will expose everything about every person that you've ever known. And it is time to go full demon time. Let's watch the world burn.
From my perspective, it is a bit weird that if you get all of these accusations thrown at you, the first thing that you do is talk about going scorched earth and just start saying that you're going to start leaking anything and everything. Like, he's not even saying that he's going to be doing this with, you know, the people that have wronged him in this situation in particular. He's just saying he's just going to do it. It doesn't seem like he's discriminating. So it's just, I just personally find it a bit peculiar to start off kind of a response to claims like that with going scorched earth, acting like you have nothing to lose, as opposed to immediately defending yourself. Also, just to clarify, I'm not on Emeru's side or Mizkif's side. I simply want to cover this, let you guys see the information. I have some opinions on it, but at the end of the day, I just want to present the information to you, try to do that as unbiased as possible. Yesterday, we only had Emeru's side of the story, and so now we're getting that further context that Mizkif is providing his side of things. There are holes in it. We also have to keep in mind that he ended up responding to Emeru in these claims hours after, when Emeru probably had a ton of prep time. She had been mentioning that she was going to be speaking about this for well over a week and said that this was coming. All that to say, I just think that there's always going to be nuance with this stuff, and especially as we now get at least a little clip of Mizkif's side of the story, we're going to start to see more of that nuance. Now, moving into the rest of his stream. So he starts it off by talking about how he and Emeru met, going into the situation with the stalker that was being held at gunpoint. But this is the first place that he addresses something that Emeru had said, and this was in regard to him throwing water bottles or his phone at her.
She brushed over that I threw water bottles or my phone near her, but that wasn't during fights. I want to make that very clear. It would be me throwing my phone on my bed when I brushed my teeth. She did tell me she got a bruise from it, and I stopped. That's all that happened. I will throw you and show you an example, chat. I'm brushing my teeth. Right here. Look at me. I would throw my phone on the bed. Like, I would just lob it over because I was going to bed. I didn't throw it at her. I want to make that very clear. I never threw it at her. I never hit her. And she even said in her situation that she bruises easily. She brushed over that I threw water bottles with her on my or my phone near her, but that wasn't during our fights. It would be throwing my phone on my bed when I brushed my teeth. She did tell me she got bruises from it, and I stopped.
Now, to Mizkif's credit, yeah, I don't believe this really framed that as this is something that they would just do casually. She specifically frames it as him throwing the phone at her directly or throwing the water bottles at him. He doesn't bring up the water bottles, but he just talks about the phone, tossing it onto the bed. At the same time, I figure, you know, if you're with someone in a relationship and they ask you to stop doing something like chucking your phone onto the bed, I can't imagine not doing that and just, you know, keep tossing the phone while they're sitting there in case it does smack him in the face. Like, that just doesn't really make sense. Altogether, he doesn't really bring up the plastic bottles, and he's just saying that any situation like this was due to him throwing it onto the bed. Following that, he does start to kind of touch a little bit on him being controlling in the relationship and brings that up. And the reasoning that he gives for being controlling like this has to do with stalkers. And Mizkif believed that if Emiru didn't post as many thirst traps or do these things, which he asked her to do, that this would not happen as much. There wouldn't be so many stalkers stalking her.
We found after being with each other that her stalkers had a lot from would come to her a lot from her short form content. These people were schizophrenic and would think that she is talking to them. Whether it was songs she played, the way she looked at the screen, or just the titles of the videos, these people started to feel she was talking to them and come to our house to stalk her. These people thought in their heads they were dating her. They were out of their mind and dangerous. I told her, if we're going to be serious about this relationship, I need her to stop posting as much and to not farm these people. She agreed and understood that it was a safety concern for not only me, but the house. Russell, Simply, Corey, or anyone that was in my house or anyone that was near us. She agreed that she wouldn't want to hurt anyone else and knew that posting these types of TikToks and posts can mess with us and is something I'm not comfortable with as a guy. So she would tell me that if I had a problem to let her know. And at first it was minor things here and there, but over time it got harder and harder to deal with.
Now, as for this point in specific, I don't know if there's necessarily a problem if two people agree on that, especially if they both genuinely believe, like Emiru included, that doing the kind of content that she was doing at the time was attracting these people that were genuinely endangering the lives of not only Emiru, but everyone else in the house, including Mizkif. I think where it does become a problem is if Emiru doesn't actually believe that, but they were just doing it to appease Mizkif. I'm not saying that that's the case, but there are different reasons, or that opinion could change over time. And if that opinion changes over time, it could definitely be seen as controlling. Or in Mizkif's position, if he did that, he might start trying to, be more controlling in other aspects of her life, which he admits to doing later on. Following that, he talks about how difficult it was for them to keep this relationship a secret. For those who don't know, he had been previously dating Maya, and it was very shortly after they had broken up and she had moved out that Emiru moved in. So if people knew about the relationship at the time, it would have been terrible for him, including their org, OTK, which she also became a part of very rapidly. I don't think you guys need to see that clip. It's not super relevant, nothing crazy. He then follows this up talking about when he was canceled back in 2022.
So in September in 2022, a lot of you guys know, I was canceled by Trainwrecks and others trying to claim I covered up sexual assault. It was proven wrong, but that destroyed my mental health. I felt like my brain cracked, and I was never the same since. I was suicidal, depressed, and I didn't know what to do with my own life. Every day felt like an absolute nightmare. I was losing OTK, my mental health, and all my friends. Emiru was one of the only people that were there for me. She ditched sponsors to go with me to Japan. She went with me anywhere I needed because she wanted me to be happy. And she knew sometimes I freaked out, I lashed out, but she loved me and she knew I was in a terrible mental place. It got so bad, the stress and constant talking about the same things over and over and no sleep and depression, that most of my hair started to fall out and Emiru started to hurt herself while we were in Japan. As this time happened, I was a massive wreck. I couldn't think straight. And being that Emiru hung out with me all day, she too started to become high-strung. We would yell at each other, fight, and argue all the time.
So TLDR, from what I'm hearing, Mizkif recognizes that he was acting not great towards Emiru. He said that Emiru was doing everything right, and it got to a point where his hair started to fall out, and Emiru was hurting herself in regard to that situation. Based off of some of the stream clips that we had seen earlier that were kind of corroborating some of the stories that Emiru was telling about these events, it seemed like Mizkif was very emotionally volatile. From berating her over Discord for picking the same class in World of Warcraft, to freaking out during a Rust stream because Emiru had more viewers than he did. It does appear that although he's padding it, he does seem to be admitting to the fact that he was being a piece of shit, and that the very intense and stressful nature of the whole thing was getting to him, and in turn that was creating a lot of stress for Emiru and the relationship. Shortly after this, he ends up jumping into what Emiru said he was going to talk about, which has to do with her rabbits. And Mizkif is alleging that she was abusing these rabbits, more specifically being incredibly neglectful of them.
Emiru has a lot of rabbits. It was her calling when she first moved moved in. These were a big part of her life. But as those rabbits moved out of her room and into the living room, they started to see disgusting neglect. No food, no water, sometimes not having clean bedding for weeks. I, along with many others who would come over, would give them what they needed, and I would tell her all the time to take care of them, but to no avail. She completely neglected those rabbits, so much that many of them just died over 1 year of being around in my house. These are small little mites that are inside the rabbit cage, and she didn't care. She completely neglected these animals, and I'm not going to sit around and let people say that she didn't. People who came to my house knew that they were neglected. This is an up-close view of the rabbit cage being completely disgusting and neglected. She left them to die, and I'm not going to sit here and have her pretend she didn't. It's fucking disgusting. This is a video from my own brother. I didn't record this. These are mites all around her cage. I would tell her to take care of them all the time, but to no avail. She completely neglected those rabbits, so much that many died just over a year or two of being around in my house. In fact, when Maya came over during my cancellation, she actually commented on Emaru's rabbits and said, "These rabbits are completely neglected and this is disgusting." Emaru wouldn't clean the cages and the smell became so bad that we started to have the rabbits just be outside. I told her if that's the case, she's got to make sure she's giving them water, because they are her responsibility. Instead, these rabbits were left outside in 100-degree heat with no food or water or anything.
Now, in regard to this rabbit situation, yes, Emaru pre-moved and said that she thought that he was going to do this, and then she also mentioned that he had this plan, this specific part here, which, you know, he had the video ready, where she claims he attempted a smear campaign where he was trying to get other people to join him in the event that Emaru tried to go after him to call this out, that she was abusing her rabbits. Now, it's clear what he means by this is that she was neglectful. Obviously, you guys saw the video. Now, I'm saying this, and this is not because I'm just taking Emaru's side. I genuinely am not sure about this. I have seen people on Twitter talking one way or the other in regard to the video that he showed of the rabbits. I haven't seen anyone talking about the mites that were in it, but from what I understand from other rabbit owners that have talked about it, that looks like what a day's worth of rabbit poop and pee looks like. I've seen some other people opposing that, saying no, like, you know, can't explain the mites. He also gives a bit more details about how the rabbits were moving from being inside to ending up being outside. He says that Maya had even commented about it. His brother had recorded the video for him. I think it would be important for Emaru to follow up and give any more clarification to this, as well as if we have anyone that is watching this video that is a vet tech that has rabbits that understands this, I would love to hear more from you guys. I think no matter what, this isn't really discrediting one way or the other. Like, two things can be true at the same time. Emaru could have had a terrible time in a very controlling relationship with Mizkif, and at the same time, Emaru could have been incredibly neglectful of these rabbits. They could have died due to that neglect. I'm not a rabbit doctor. I'm not a vet. I don't know. We don't need to jump into this and have the opinion that one person is a holier than thou, you know, angel, and the other person is the devil. I think at this point, we're just going to need more information either from Mizkif or Emaru or these people that he referenced like Maya to further, you know for sure what was going on. Next up, Mizkif talks about a situation that Emaru had brought up in her statement, which involved a stalker going to their house, and Mizkif says that he held the stalker at gunpoint for half an hour waiting for police to arrive.
One stalker came to my house, and I had to point a gun at him for 30 minutes until the cops came. These stalkers are no joke, and the pressure from the relationship, the anger I felt, and the stalkers as a whole really made us lash out at each other.
Now, from Emaru's statement, again, you can check out my video or go watch the full stream, which is also linked in that video. She says that he was just holding this gun, pointing it at the door that he had shut between him and the stalker. She also included that Bonnie was really the person who was actually helping everyone the most, and so she should be getting that credit herself, as Mizkif took this opportunity to try to look like a warrior for them all. Shortly after this, he ends up going more in depth about him being controlling in their relationship, and he has his own reasoning for why he was being so controlling.
In regards to being controlling, I told her many things. I told her to dress older, to stop wearing pajamas, to stop talking about stalkers and schizos as a whole, stop talking about past relationships, and yes, I didn't want her to travel without me. I also said that I didn't want her to hang out with specific people. This is because I didn't want her to get hurt. I didn't want Emmy to get assaulted. I didn't want some man to do something to her when I'm not there, and I wanted to keep her safe. And I know with how my mental was and who I was back then that I didn't do everything right. I know I was controlling and I should have just ended the fucking relationship, but I was so confused as a person. And I'm sorry I did it. I'm sorry things got to this fucking point, man.
He admits to being controlling, and there are honestly some points of it that I think people can understand. Dressing to look older, also not addressing stalkers, schizos, things like that. I think that that's important. Those reasons for saying, hey, don't do this or that sound like you could understand them. At the very least, there could be a conversation there. He then follows into like, I don't want you hanging out with certain people, and that's where it starts to get a bit more sensitive. At some point, you recognize that Emeru is another fucking adult. They get to pick who they're around, and once you start broaching into that territory where you're like cutting people off from someone's life, that's where it's really starting to get abusive, where it's starting to get toxic. I could see two sides of those initial comments. Whether Mizkif was doing this for the same reasons that I'm kind of listing out, or that he was doing it for, you know, the power dynamic itself, I don't know. But I think other people could agree that, yeah, you probably don't want your partner if, you know, stalkers are showing up to your guys' homes to talk to or, you know, acknowledge these people that keep threatening your life and ending up at your home. Again, he also acknowledges that he didn't do it in the best way. He said he got aggressive at times. I again think that that is probably padding the truth. But continuing on, he talks about the last 9 months of their relationship, how it escalated very much so in those last months.
The last 9 months of this relationship, things got extremely fucking toxic. I told her to move out. She didn't move out on her own. I told her to move out because I wanted space, but she still wanted me around at all times. She would get upset if we didn't sleep together or if we weren't around. She always wanted me to drive over to her house, but I never wanted to because I wanted to be alone. And that increased our fights. But the stalkers continued. Between the rabbits, the stalkers, and the overall ability to handle situations with each other, I knew this wouldn't last.
Now, I don't know necessarily how that falls in line with the timeline, as Emeru was a bit vague in this general area as well, saying that she had kind of made up her mind at, you know, a certain point in time that she was going to move out, but she didn't say anything yet. As far as we know, Mizkif could be unaware of that, or he may know more, that she actually didn't want to leave at that point, whatever. I think the more relevant thing is a claim that he makes after. So Emeru had made mention that he was being really mean to her cat, and that caused her to move the cat out over to the new house right away. She claims he was just being mean to the cat for no reason, but she claims that he was just being mean to the cat for no reason, but he tells a different story, that her cat, Emeru's, that being that Emeru's cat was attacking his.
She did not want to move out. As for me telling Cheddar to leave my house, he was swatting at Chompy constantly and making him bleed. I not only was the one that wanted her to move out first, I was the one that wanted the cat out of the house because he was attacking my cat.
Now, the biggest thing here is he doesn't have evidence of this, although you can't always imagine that you're going to think, oh, I need to take a picture of this, especially, you know, if they were so back and forth, being in a relationship, out of it, being so escalated. I'd be very curious to see if Emeru follows up on this, but again, this is just one of those he said, she said situations where Mizkif is painting it in a very different light than how Emeru introduced it. This is a part that kind of got to me. So he ends up bringing up and saying that Emeru was also violent towards him. And I'm just gonna let the clip play.
I'm ashamed that the situations got so bad, but Emmy was also violent. She would throw clothes or plushies at me, and I punched holes in the walls or slammed doors in aggression.
Now, to say Emeru was also violent and then follow that up with she threw plushies at me and clothes, and that you punched holes in walls and slammed doors, I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to see the difference in magnitude of that. If I'm being as charitable as possible, yes, if your significant other, even if it's not going to hurt you, is throwing plushies or clothing or anything at you with anger towards you and they want to hit you with something, yeah, that's not a good relationship. That's not great. They shouldn't be doing that. But to compare that to you while she's on stream, slamming the door so hard that you break the lock on it and punching holes in your wall, I just struggled to find where that's comparable. I am, again, curious to hear your guys' thoughts on this particular point, but this also leads into one of the only other instances of Mizkif bringing up receipts. Emeru had talked about in terms of verbal abuse that Mizkif would at times do this guilt thing of like, I'm going to neck myself. And as I think most people understand, that's an incredibly manipulative and really shitty thing to do. He had done it multiple times from Emeru's statements, and Mizkif brings an example, evidence that she was doing the same thing back.
I one time did say I was going to kill myself during an argument, but Emmy did this as well numerous times. She would constantly say she's going to kill herself in arguments, and I have a picture where while I had a gun pointed at one of her stalkers who came to my house while she was in Kansas, she told me she was going to kill herself out of aggression. of the situation while it was happening. And I'm just going to leak everything because I don't really care. This is the situation. I told her that a stalker's at the house. I'm freaking out. What is happening? Can you call me? I'll call you. I literally want to kill myself. I can't take this anymore. I feel so alone and like a problem. So just want to show this. She was also using the I want to kill myself a lot in our situation and relationship.
So one example is not showing that she was doing it a lot. And number two, the situation is a bit different. Emeru's examples were you saying that you were going to off yourself because your viewer count was lower, or you were feeling insecure. You were directly saying it to her and that she was a reason for it. What we're looking at right now is that she is dealing with and finding out that yet again, there is another stalker, and now her partner, you, or I think at the very time, very close to being, you guys were into each other regardless, you were having to deal with this person, and she felt guilty for that. And she was saying she was going to off herself, and she felt so alone and like a problem. I'm struggling to see this as her somehow trying to guilt trip you. This sounds like someone who feels like they're not in control of the situation around them. They're frustrated and they feel like they can't do anything. Also, it seemed very clear she felt like a burden to you and the people around you guys when she has these stalkers coming. She feels like responsible for them showing up. Obviously, nothing that I just said is set in stone. I'm just trying to understand the situation itself, but presenting this as an example of her doing something equal to you just because they use the same words doesn't seem like a fair assessment of the situation. I'm just very confused as to why he thought that this was going to, be comparable to what she was making claims of and showing. Mizkif then touches on and gives his side of the story in regard to Emeru's claim of SA from Mizkif when he was consoling her and then tried to make a move on her.
We broke up for about a month. Then got back together because we thought we can make it work. We went to get food at BJ's, a common place where we would get food. And then we went back to her house. We cuddled for about 30 minutes and started to kiss. She said that she was okay with this on her stream, and I started to advance to the next stage because I thought that's what she wanted. She yelped, and I immediately sprung up and was scared if I did anything wrong or did wrong in general. I got scared and left the house. I apologize if that made Emmy uncomfortable for me not saying sorry, and I wish I said sorry back then. But we got back together soon afterwards.
This is post-video Connor kind of re-recording, because after thinking about this, talking about this specific part with what Mizkif is claiming is going on versus Emeru, there seems to be a lot going on. Number one, Mizkif's retelling of the story is a bit different from Emeru's. Number one, he doesn't make mention of her crying at any point, saying that they were cuddling for 30 minutes and then that they were kissing each other for a bit of time. Emeru retells this as her having been sobbing, followed by him holding her and then her allowing him to kiss her face. The retelling of events by Mizkif changes a few things that I think are important. Initially, I had a thought in my head that, especially with what he also brings up, that Emeru doesn't include in her statement, not to say it's true or not, but that they got back together shortly after. At first glance, that is a bit peculiar in terms of behavior, that if you feel like you've been SA'd by someone, you probably wouldn't be jumping back into a relationship with them right away afterwards. However, needs to be considered that from what they're both describing this as, it was incredibly toxic. Emeru's perspective is that this was an incredibly emotionally abusive situation that she was in, and it's not uncommon for people in relationships like this to have this on and off and getting back together and breaking up. There's also the power dynamic that Mizkif was this huge person, brought Emeru in, you can feel an obligation to them. There's a lot of different emotional nuance to that can explain why they would end up getting back together. At the same time, there's a conflict in my head, at least, when it comes down to what we're defining here as SA. By Google's definition, so just take it at its word here, it's defined by non-consensually, at least at the first degree, non-consensually touching someone in a sexual manner. I'm pretty sure in just about any relationship that is going to exist. It is just a part of life. You're in a relationship, you think you're getting the signal to continue things, you give it a go, it's not the case, and then you back off because, you're not trying to make your partner uncomfortable. They didn't consent to it, and they made that clear by saying, nope, don't want to continue. By definition, yeah, that's SA, but in a relationship with a partner, you recognize, oh, they weren't doing this to be malicious, they weren't trying to take advantage of me, and they stopped when they realized I was uncomfortable. I think most people have probably found themselves in the way that Mizkif described this, as trying to move into things. Turns out you misread a signal and you backed off. But the core of this hinges on what happened, because if it's from Emeru's perspective and Emeru's retelling, she was bawling her eyes out, they had been separated, she was okay with him kissing her face, kind of sounding more like consoling behavior more than anything like crazy romantic, although it still is. And then aggressively, he tried to move on to doing more with her. I feel like this framing is really important. Obviously, Mizkif is going to frame it differently than Emiru, especially when it's allegations like this. End of the day, it's coming down to a he said, she said. I don't know a whole ton about Emiru's history with being like honest about stuff like this, but Mizkif does not have the best track record. A lot of people don't trust the guy. Other huge creators don't trust the guy. This guy's known to burn bridges. As soon as he went live, he's talking about leaking a ton of shit about all these creators. I am legitimately curious to see discussion about this point because I think it's important. Altogether, I think this is the heaviest, most sensitive part of this entire drama. And so it's difficult for me, especially in a situation like this, to just kind of make a general assumption and move on. I think it's really important to look at as many layers as possible and consider them. Big ramble over. Sorry if that was annoying. Back to the video. Following up after this, he talks about how him and Emiru kind of had this deciding moment where they needed to figure out what they were going to do, and Emiru had this idea to write out what her, wants were, like her needs for a future with Mizkif, down on a piece of paper.
I'm gonna let everyone know that what I'm about to say is very true. This is exactly what happened, and she cannot argue this. One day, after staying over Emiru's house, Emiru made me breakfast, and she wrote down everything she wanted. She wrote she wants me to move closer to her. She wrote that she wants me to marry her, and she wants kids with me in the next 5 years. And I just looked at this letter that was staring in front of me, and I just handed her back the paper. She began to cry, and I told her, I'm sorry, I just can't do this anymore. I knew we were just beyond the point of toxicity in the relationship, that our trust had completely died, and that we had so many issues that I couldn't deal with it, and I was not mentally well.
Now, kind of weird thing, I'm just jumping back like truly half a minute before he starts talking about this. I just want to include this because it seems to contradict how he ends that, where he said, I knew that we were at a point where we were too toxic, etc.
We were still fighting, but it did feel like the relationship had good progress. And we were both agreed we need to talk about our future since it's been 3 years.
So number one, yeah, I mean, that kind of seems simple. Just figure out what you guys need to have in the future of a relationship. And if that isn't compatible, you move on. It may be small, but just how he goes from just a little bit ago saying like, you know what, I think we can actually make this work, to as soon as he moves into talking about this reveal of the paper, he goes, you know what? Yeah, we're past the point of saving. We're too toxic, etc. It's just, it doesn't really line up. He's saying two things that are completely opposite at the same time. Maybe somehow that opinion shifted between what he was talking about and then actually putting the note in front of him. I don't know. Lastly, he talks about, yes, he was sending her messages and whatnot, which Emiru had showed on stream of him like drunk texting and stuff. He also touches on that house party where he was kind of just following her around like Emiru described, and he just tries to chalk it up to it being a small house.
I did see her at a party once at Simply's house. The house was very small, and I opened the door, I said whoops, and proceeded to talk in the other room about what I possibly did wrong, and began to bawl out and be depressed because I just saw my ex-girlfriend. I want to make it very clear. I was not following her, nor lingering around her. I was with others the entire night. The house is about 2,000 square feet with about 50 people there. I, of course, was near her, but I was never following her.
He does deny following her around, as he describes it was a 2,000 square foot house with 50 people in it. Again, that comes down to the he said, she said, except Emiru also has that other individual apologizing for being there and being around Mizkif and seeing what was happening. But as he starts to close up stream, he also talks about that he started going to therapy back in February of this year, that he feels better. And then he kind of closes out that segment with this.
I truly hope nothing but the best for Emmy. I know she said a lot of these things today, and I do believe a lot of them were false, but I do hope nothing but the best for her, and I'm sorry that any of this happened. I hate that we're in this situation, and I hope that she can move on. We were in a toxic relationship. I saw that. I've realized over the years of 2 relationships now online that I'm a horrible boyfriend and I have a lot to work on for myself.
Now, again, we are taking, someone's words for someone else's words. Emiru does happen to have a bit more corroborating evidence to talk about the claims that she was making. At the same time, Mizkif doesn't even directly address anything in particular when he says this. He's like, I just think, it's wrong. And then he doesn't provide any more information on that. Now, he does add that there will be see photos and proof in the future. And he also says that he believes, to give it a bit more detail, that the stories that were told from Emeru are exaggerated.
I am going to defend myself in these situations. I am not going away. I have no plans to go away. And I believe a lot of the situations today were absolutely exaggerated. I have dozens of photos and videos, calls and messages as well, if she has them. I have things I will be leaking over the next few days of other people, of other things. I have a lot of messages that I have that I'm going to expose as time goes on, because I do believe that this is a time to go fucking buck wild.
Now, I think in any situation where you're going to have an online relationship and it's very intense, like they've now both described it, there is going to be exaggeration. The question is how much, and how much does that really impact the stories themselves or what you've done? We can hear the door slamming over and over and over again and seeing Emeru flinch from it. He admits to the holes getting punched in walls. I mean, those are the, the very high octane things, but there's actually a little bit more. First thing is he does admit to having talked to an employee of Emeru's at TwitchCon, not saying that he was going to destroy Emeru, but that he was going to go nuclear.
Can you clarify what, if anything, was said to her team at TwitchCon? I said that if she goes after me, then I will go nuclear. And that is exactly what I said. And that is what's going to happen, because you can't mess with me anymore. I don't have anything to lose. I'm sorry, I don't. Go after me all you want. I have nothing to lose. Just those rabbits. She did.
The way he paints it is he's saying, well, if she talks shit about me, I'm going to talk shit back. Emeru painted it more as like, I am holding this over your head, and if you ever release this information, I'm going to, tell these people this, or I'm going to make up a story. I think Emeru's retelling relies on this rabbit thing not being true, or that he was holding it over her head, because that also puts into question, if he knew that this was happening, if he knew the rabbits were being taken care of, why didn't he step in? You can look at that and go, well, he was using this, and it's like, oh, I can use this, hold this over her head so she doesn't talk shit about me. That's just something that came to my mind. Not saying that that's true, I can understand that line of reasoning. And again, like a clip ago, he was mentioning he was going to go Scorched Earth on everybody and anybody and just start releasing clips because he has nothing to lose. It just, again, seems like immature behavior if these people haven't been doing anything wrong to him and he's just been holding onto all of this. Seems a bit strange. Seems more like he was keeping blackmail, and he keeps alluding to it like he's prepared it, which, again, is not making that sound good. Mizkif confirms that, yes, he was incredibly envious of viewership, and he fully admits that, although I don't think that's, crazy new info to most people. I think he had an episode with Healthy Gamer, GG, Dr. K, went over this. His self-worth is very much attached to the views and stuff. He's very obsessed with that. So it was just kind of confirmation that, yeah, he did actually get really upset when other people would do better. He said that he gets really envious of other people with higher view counts, followers. But now one of the more damning ones, which is just kind of crazy how he addresses it, has to do with Emeru's claim about him driving 150 miles an hour down the highway, and he was saying that he was going to end them both because Mr. Beast had brought another streamer on for a video, something like that, instead of Mizkif. This is what he has to say in regard to that situation.
Did you really drive 150 miles an hour? I'm going to say this very clear. If you know me in Austin, Texas, I drive fast everywhere. I drive fast literally everywhere. I'm in an Audi R8 in Austin, Texas, where the freeways are open. I drive fast all the time. I do. I don't even remember what situation she was talking about. I mean, we were in cars with each other all the time. I remember one time when she was picking me up from the airport and she was in her blue Corvette, and she started the speed when we were on a straightaway when she was getting mad, and she stayed quiet. I don't remember the exact speed she got up to, but we were definitely flying.
You probably saw it in chat, but like people were making jokes. Okay, so yeah, you did it. I would have to assume, based off of what he described, that not only did it happen then, it probably happened multiple times. He said he couldn't even remember. I don't care if you consider yourself a speedy driver. I think you should be able to remember if you were driving 150 down the highway screaming that you're going to end the both of you because some other content creator got a cool thing going for him. Just saying people know that you drive fast, and then using the example that Emeru, when he went to the airport, she had her blue Corvette, doesn't even sound like they were in the same car and she was speeding on the highway. The point of her story, from what I understand, is that she was explaining that you made it seem like both your lives were in danger. That's horrific, to be in the car with somebody and they're threatening both your lives and you have no control of that. Again, this is giving an example of Emeru, driving fast and completely ignoring the main point of that story that she had brought up, which is that you made it sound like you were going to end the both of you. Now that ends up wrapping up his response stream. He ends up with a few more closing remarks saying that he's going to be back with this evidence, things like that. With all that being said, if any new information comes to light that's going to, you know, have a serious impact on everything we know so far, I'll be sure to cover it. If you guys enjoyed, again, consider subscribing, leave the video a like. But regardless of that, thank you for just watching my video. That's it for this one. I'll see you guys in the next. Adios. Peace. Bye.